Wisdom from the Waves. Stories of courage, creativity, and connection. My name is Michelle Casserly. I'm a creative and a collector of stories, and here are some of them. Today's Sunday, and I thought I'd talk about why I swim. I swim in the ocean almost every day, and in the beginning I needed a friend to get there. We'd sort of made a commitment to each other. Through winter, when it got really cold and windy and the weather wasn't exactly optimal for swimming, we would kind of rely on each other to get down there, because we'd say we'll text if we're not going to go, and some mornings I'd wake up and I'd be looking at that phone saying, please text, and then she wouldn't text. So we'd meet each other down there and think that we're both mad. And usually in winter people will ask you that. They say, are you crazy? Sometimes we think, I think we are a bit crazy. And the most common question we get asked is, isn't it cold? And my friend, who's always makes me laugh, she says, we don't use the C word down here. We talk about it being invigorating or refreshing. But yeah, it's damn cold. The first year that we decided to go through winter, we got wetsuits, and it was the beginning of the pandemic and everything was shut down, and I had no money because I wasn't working, and my beautiful friend bought me a wetsuit, and so we started swimming through winter. And boy, I remember being like an icicle. I ended up buying gloves and little booties, and I'd have all my clothes and my beanie. So as soon as I got out, I'd be straight into clothes and beanie and straight home for the shower, freezing, shivering. My hands were blue and they just wouldn't warm up for a few hours. And then slowly we sort of got used to it, and, it wasn't as cold anymore. And then when we came to the second year, knowing that my temperature had readjusted a little bit, I thought, I wonder how long I can swim until I need to put my wetsuit on. So I just sort of tried it and just kept moving. You couldn't sort of stop and look for things. And yeah, I managed to get to mid-June and I thought, well, I don't think it's going to get much colder than this. So that was my first winter, which was last winter, swimming just with my rashi and shorts on. I did have my gloves on though, and my hands still stayed quite cold, but I felt great. And I think, part of the fun of swimming for us is that we feel adventurous, we feel brave. It can be rocky and, the swirl can be right up and there's hardly anyone in the water, but we're just doing it. And I think for me, that was one of the first times in my life I've really felt I was taking on physical challenges and being brave in that physical level. I know that I'm very brave emotionally. I've done a lot of hard work and a lot of hard therapy and having to face up to really painful stuff. So I already knew I was brave, but to actually take it into a physical context was really new for me. And yeah, it became such a buzz just to feel like I'm doing something that I never thought I'd do. When I first used to start swimming, I was so anxious, and I actually had to have a snorkel and goggles because I had to see what was under the water, because I was scared of jellyfish. I was scared of just fear, and it just helped me get in the water and see what was happening. And then that's actually become one of the most beautiful things for me, that I can actually swim around. When I first started swimming, I was really quite unfit, because it's quite physical. It looks quite dreamy in the water, but you use up a lot of energy really quickly, and you're using, almost all the muscles in your body. So it's pretty intense. And I would start doing a bit of a lap, and then I'd have to stop and I'd look at things. And in the beginning, I started looking at things just to give myself a break so I could get back to swimming. And then that's actually become probably the most enjoyable part of swimming in the ocean, is looking around for everything, looking in the corners. And the corners were not somewhere I could look before. I couldn't swim anywhere that had shadow or looked dark or couldn't see. I had a lot of fears starting swimming. And then slowly that's become part of the big joy for me, is actually getting to see what's around and what's happening. My favourite part of swimming is seeing all the creatures. I think my very favourite thing is the sea stars, because I just love them. There's just something about them. They're so elegant and so strange. And I think the more I've learnt about them, the more fascinating they become. And I used to think of, the creatures in the ocean as fairly, dumb, which I feel embarrassed about now, but just thought they were kind of fairly mindless creatures. And I guess part of that was kind of how I was taught at school, that they were creatures without great thinking capacity. But what I've observed in the ocean is that they're actually got a great capacity for curiosity and for fun. And, even watching some of the tiniest little creatures, like the little prawn shrimp and even the little tiny fish, they come to see what's happening in the ocean. And there's some fish that I've really sort of got to know, and I don't even know what kind of fish they are. They're like a little flat grey, sort of triangle-y shaped fish, and I only noticed them one day because I was hovering in the top corner looking at the sea star and really trying to see under its legs, because they've got all these little, I don't know what they're called. I want to call them tentacles, but they're not. It reminds me of a snail. It's like snail eyes, but under their legs, and that's how they move around. And this one was actually moving, which you don't always see. They're often fairly still. And I was watching this, and then I went to move my arm, and then suddenly something moved underneath me, and I looked down, and these little fish were just looking at me, just all swimming around under my chest and arms. And so every time that I swim, I'll usually hang around the corners just to have a look. And also because these little fish kept coming to visit, and they were quite tiny to start with, probably only, 6 or 7 centimetres long. And the longer I've been swimming, the more they seem to find me, and I'll just hang around for them. And I can make up the stories because I don't know what they're thinking, but they definitely seem to have a sense of curiosity about them. And now some of them are, maybe 15 centimetres long, and there's a group of them, and we always seem to find each other in the water, and that feels nice. So in the beginning, I could only go swimming when my friend went down there. But now I've made all sorts of friends, fish friends and people. There's a lot of interesting people that swim in the water. And, some of the conversations there are some of the best of the day. We just share stories of connection and disconnection. I've heard some really vulnerable disclosures down there. We kind of cheer each other on and hear all the fun things that we're doing, and then also some of the really hard stuff we're doing and how the world's changing. But I wouldn't start my day without a swim. It's just become such an ingrained part of my life now, and I love it. So the idea of this podcast is to share some of the stories, share some of the things that happen in the water, and also hear from some of the people who swim in the water. So thanks for listening. Talk to you again soon.